Welcome, everyone. We're delighted to bring our guest, our very special guest, Cynthia Jurs, with us today. She's a wonderful and insightful teacher and guide, and we thought she would be the perfect person to start off our new year together. So, welcome, Cynthia. What Cynthia is going to do is I'm going to turn this session over to her after a brief introduction, and she will lead us in her way through the next 45 minutes. And then Cynthia will be back with us at the final session of the day, which is 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And she's going to offer a short meditation and then open the space for dialogue. So feel free to come with any sharings or any questions for Cynthia, as it will be a very engaged part of our day. So for those of you who don't know Cynthia, I'm just going to give her bio a little bit. Cynthia is a Dharmacharya in the order of interbeing of Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh, and a Lama of the Vajrayana Buddhist tradition. In 1990, she made a life-changing pilgrimage to meet a 106-year-old meditation master who was living in a cave in Nepal, and from whom she received the practice of the earth treasure vases. She lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where she teaches a unique blend of engaged Buddhism and sacred activism in response to the call of the earth. She is also the guiding teacher of the International Gaya Mandala Sangha, which meets virtually for monthly and weekly meditations. Her nonprofit, Alliance for the Earth, conducts pilgrimages around the world in partnership with Indigenous elders and young activists dedicated to planetary healing and collective awakening through the Earth Treasure Vase Global Healing Project. For more than a decade, Cynthia has carried out a peace-building program in Liberia, West Africa. She directed the film Turning Prayer into Action, and her book, Summoned by the Earth, Becoming a Holy Vessel for Healing Our World, is forthcoming from the Tibet House in the US. Her website is gayamandala.net, and we will be sharing all of her information in our email that comes after this program. So welcome, Cynthia, and thank you so much for being here and bringing forward our New Year's together.
Thank you so much, Joanna. Wonderful to see all of you, some of whom I have seen quite a few times now before, and some of whom I have not. And it's always good to be with you. I appreciate what you're doing here and just the simplicity of how you do it. It's really good medicine. So happy New Year. It feels like the new year is already off to a pretty big start in my life anyway. It was nice and quiet for the first few days, and then it just started to gain momentum, and I feel like this year is going to be quite something. So here we are to turn our attention to how to cultivate presence, how to be with, as you invited me to speak on, living from a place of possibility in challenging times. So indeed, these are challenging times. And so, as Thich Nhat Hanh would say, let us begin anew with this new year. Let us begin anew and really take this I mean, you all have given yourselves this better part of this day. I remember Thich Nhat Hanh, he used to invite us, members of his order of interbeing, to take at least one day a week to stop and to allow everything, all that busyness to settle down and to refresh ourselves so that then we can go on in a way that is helpful. And so often we forget to do that. We don't take care of ourselves in this kind of way. So let's do this, in the face of the challenges that are upon us, both in our personal lives and in the world. We need to recognize that we've been given some practices that are very, very helpful to refresh and restore and meet the moment. I was looking back at my previous visits with you, and so I thought, it sounds like the topic is a little bit along the lines of what I've been asked to talk about in the past, which is, I think last year it was meeting the moment in these hard times. And in 2001, it was reflecting on the deep uncertainty of the times. So it's a recurring theme here, but it's also a recurring theme in the world. It's what's happening, isn't it? Yeah. So life is challenging. That is for sure. And the question is, how do we create the conditions for new possibilities? How do we meet the challenges creatively and not just go under with how hard it is? How do we live in such a way as to feed the spirit of what we want to see in the world? How do we do that? And how do we create the possibilities that are unconditioned by the old patterns and stories that we have been living inside of for generations that are not serving anymore? It's really clear, I think, to all of us that those old ways aren't working, and in fact are creating a lot of destruction in the world. So we need to open to new possibilities. It's really clear too, isn't it, that the old systems that have governed our lives for many generations are just holding on for dear life, making change very, very difficult. And it's like that within ourselves too, of course. Those old patterns that are so familiar are hard to transform. But a strong meditation practice will naturally catalyze change. It's kind of magic, because it seems so simple. It takes a lot, though, to get to that place, to actually take our seat and look within and stop, as Thich Nhat Hanh advises. A meditation practice naturally brings to the surface and sheds light on the patterns that are no longer serving. We see them for what they are. Sometimes it takes a little while because, first of all, we have to just settle ourselves down. You know, we're going in 10 directions. There's all this chatter, all this input. So the first step is stopping. But then as we settle, we start to see what's there. We start to see what's under the surface. And usually we take up a meditation practice because we know we need to change. We're up against sort of that dead end. Like isn't there more? Isn't there something else? Can't I be operating in a different way? We're ready to change. So we look to find a different path. I'm sure I'm not saying anything any of you haven't already heard or thought about, but we're beginning anew. We're kind of going back to the basics here at the beginning of this new year. So when we go to our meditation practice, we do begin to see all those places that are calling for transformation. It's like, oh God, that, that's been with me for a long time and I don't need it anymore. The places where we have suffered over and over again, because this is samsara, going around and around and around, and we just keep repeating the same old mistakes. So the teachings of the Buddha inform us that we can practice in a way that can take us to the origin of our suffering. We can follow that thread to where it began. And if we do, when we do, we are free of that pattern. But it does take courage, because these are deeply embedded patterns that are sometimes painful to look at directly. And it's not enough just to look at it and go, oh yeah, that, I see that. Oh, now I'm free. No. We have to be willing to experience it, and experience it completely in order to cross over to the other shore, which is the shore of liberation. So we have to feel it. A lot of times our meditation practice sort of disembodies us or takes us into our heads. And the important thing here is to feel it. Feel what's happening in the world. Feel what's happening in our lives. Feel our own life force, what we've been through. This is a precious human life that we have been given. And so our intention is to make the most of it, not just for ourselves, but for all beings. Checking in, are you with me? Okay, good. Because we're in this together. We are in the process of making an evolutionary change in how we live and how we operate and how we go forward in the world, because we recognize more and more that we're all in this together. There's no separation. So I need you to cross to that other shore. I need you to cross to the other shore. If we have, if we're going to make the changes collectively that are being asked of us. So it's important. So we practice individually in that context now. The world, the challenges of the world are affecting our personal lives. Our personal lives have always been challenging because we're human and we have all these issues. But our personal lives are even more demanding and challenging because of how crazy the world is now, how small it's become, how scary it is when we really look directly at what's happening. Our challenges are growing in immensity and they're more global in nature, so it's like there's hardly any direction we can look and not see suffering, not see hardship. It's heartbreaking and overwhelming, and it feels like there's nowhere to go where we can be safe and find peace. It's very discouraging that way. And that feeling of discouragement and heartbreak, it just compounds everything, which makes our lives even harder. When we feel we don't have a refuge, we don't have a safe place, and we are also in that place feeling alone and lost. Like, whoa, what do we do? Where do we go? How do we survive? So the good news is that the challenges of these times are giving us the chance to face crisis as opportunity, as the old saying goes. So it can also feel quite exciting. Like, wow, how are we going to get through this? What creative resources do we have? And we have a lot. But we don't really have access to them if we're all caught up in our old stories. Then we're just feeding the spirit of that old story and not the new one. But if we're willing to face into our own lives and in the lives of the world directly, which is one of the things that meditation can do for us, open that possibility, we can get really strong. When, I don't know about you, but when I go to meditate, oftentimes it feels like, I'm actually facing a little death because I'm up against those parts of myself where change is needed and something has to die. That old part has to die. And there's that letting go. There's that letting go into the open awareness itself where anything is possible. But only if I'm willing to let go of all the self-importance, all the self-referencing, all the attachment. And so, but that process builds a lot of strength that is very, very helpful in the face of whatever challenges arise. Because to be creative and to respond effectively, we have to be open, and not full of some big idea about, what I can do to make it all better. We want to be in the moment. And being in the moment does require letting go of our attachments. But all it takes is one breath to come back to the present moment, to come back to our true self, to come back to what's really happening. All it takes is just one step, and we can be free again. That's precious. That's precious. To know that and to practice it. Over and over and over again. But that one breath changes everything. And change, as we know, is the only known factor. Everything changes. Everything changes. Impermanence is the one thing we can really count on. Thich Nhat Hanh would say, impermanence greets me in beauty. He has these little gathas, mindfulness poems, that he has written. And there was one that came in connection to the compost. Seeing how the compost creates the rose. And that impermanence greets me in beauty. So we can relax in the awareness that change is inevitable. Nothing stays the same. And we can trust that it will come. So that becomes, in a sense, a kind of refuge. And knowing this, reminding ourselves about impermanence, we can also practice in such a way, live our lives in such a way as to contribute positively to that change instead of negatively. When we're caught in reactive emotions and old patterns, when we're caught in frustration and anger and blame, all right, we're not really contributing positively. So that's the process of transforming those unhelpful seeds. Watering the good seeds, the seeds that are part of our bodhicitta, that wish to be of benefit. So, what are the conditions that support us in being able to live in such a way as to contribute positively to change in our own lives and in the world? What are those conditions? What are those qualities? Given all the challenges and the complexities of the world that we're facing today, this year, I think we need to keep it pretty simple. So we don't lose the way. We're going to have to stay with it. So let's keep it simple. Stay steady in the face of the big change. Staying steady. Find our stability, our grounding. Simple, steady, stable. Stable in body, speech, and mind. Body, speech, and mind. Feeling ourselves grounded, connected to the beauty of life, connected to each other, connected to community, connected to the trees, the birds. So, a couple of things about how to stay connected. Simple things. Resting awareness on the breath. The breath is always with us. It's a through line our whole life. And when we make it a conscious, partner, when we form a relationship to our breath consciously, mindfully, we instantly have a very simple way, to restore ourselves, to calm everything down, to enter the present moment. And so every time we realize we're distracted or have gone off on some story or got caught up in some reactive emotion that's not serving, all we have to do is take another breath with awareness and come back over and over again. And that becomes the basis of our practice of transformation. It's that simple. One of the other two things, there's three of them I'm going to share. The breath is the first one. The heart. The feeling of being centered in our heart, not our head. The Tibetans call this the mind. This is the seat, really, of the mind, of the awareness. And so dropping, and you can do this with your breath, dropping down into the heart and really feeling, living from a place of feeling from here is a way of connecting, isn't it? When we're up in our heads, we're separate. But when we're in our hearts, we can feel connected. We can suffer with, the compassion is born. for ourselves and for each other and for the world. And it's from there that our actions will truly be of benefit. When we think we know what to do, we sometimes make more of a mess of it. And when we are living from our hearts, we know in a different way. And it's natural. I always say I feel as if compassion is the greatest gift of being a human being. We have this capacity that is so precious, so unique. It makes me cry. So that's one of the spirits that we want to feed in our lives so that it can ripple out and make a difference. And there's nothing really we need to do except feed that spirit, and it naturally goes out and makes a difference in the world effortlessly. The third aspect of this that is so simple, that helps us so much in the face of challenges, is to live in relationship with nature. Because when we connect with nature, when we allow ourselves to return to the natural world, we return to our own nature as well, our own true nature, our own true self. So much of our lives can unfold with ease when we do that, when we experience ourselves as part of the web of life, as part of the interconnected web, this relationship of interbeing that Thich Nhat Hanh talks about. And again, we get so scattered, so distracted, so caught up, so overwhelmed with everything that's coming at us all the time. It's so important to come back, to remember what our elders, what our ancestors, what our indigenous teachers who still have that connection, what the animals say to us, what the birds and the trees and the flowers and the waters. They have such profound teachings. And we can access those teachings ourselves whenever we put ourselves in that context, see ourselves, experience ourselves in this way. Even if we live in the midst of the city, there's ways we can make that connection. Maybe it's just looking out the window at the blue sky or feeling the wind on our face as we walk down the sidewalk. Whatever it is, it's important and it's part of the practice. These things all bring us back to our true self. and reconnect us to each other and to all of life. And life on earth needs us to do this now. We've been asleep for a long time. It's time we come back and wake up. And I'm speaking now collectively, but each of us individually has a role. Don't think you don't, because you are as important as anyone else. And it's all contributing to the situation that we're in. When we meditate or spend time in nature, this is another key. We sometimes find ourselves entering a timeless place, right? Where time kind of falls away and we have that experience of timelessness, a quality that is unconditioned by ordinary reality. Most human beings, sadly, only know that ordinary reality, that wheel. There's very little awareness of something larger than ourselves. But we can tap into that in meditation. We can open that portal. And again, it happens naturally. It's nothing, in fact, it's nothing that we do. But that place that is unconditioned is where we reconnect with our relaxation and ease, where that joy arises naturally, and where we can see things a lot more clearly. In that clarity, we can recognize what's really important and what is not so important. And a lot of times what we think is so important is kind of seen for what it is. And that joy that arises when we touch that very special place is a positive quality that we can consciously cultivate in order to create the conditions for goodness to flower in our lives, to meet the challenges, to send out quality that is positive. Gratitude, joy, love. These are qualities that create the conditions for wonderful things to flower in our lives. We don't want to hang out in heaviness all the time, do we? God, that's just so destructive, and so, not, it doesn't make it worth living if we're just always in that heavy place. I mean, again, I keep referring to Thich Nhat Hanh today, but he has such wisdom. And there's one of his precepts, or what he calls mindfulness trainings, about planting seeds of joy in order to facilitate the work of transformation in the depths of our consciousness and in our world. We can't do that difficult work if we don't have joy, if we don't have access to uplifting qualities, or we'll just simply go under. So anyway, these are important things. Creating the conditions to enter the timeless present, or presence, as the case may be, is a way to open up that portal, to see the crack in everything. What the Tibetans sometimes call the view. And then just rest in that state until, the mind starts kicking in and the bell rings. But we see the pathways, we become curious, we become creative. We can engage then in a new story where anything is possible. And in that timeless place is where the miracles occur, because they're unconditioned by ordinary reality. Anything is possible. Synchronicities start happening. We go, oh my God, I was just thinking about you, or something. And it's like there's a new thread that you can follow that's different. And that's when the old patterns start getting left behind and we feed this new spirit. We're connected in different way. We all know, though, I'm looking at the time and I'm realizing, I better get on with it here. We all know that change, though, is threatening to the status quo. People around us might not want us to change because it means they have to change. The old systems of power don't want to change either. They'd rather keep us in our place. But when we practice in this way, when we practice in general, anyway, whatever is in the way of and preventing that transformation and awakening will come into the spotlight. Because we have this intention to wake up, to see clearly. And the light is, after all, the substance of the spiritual path. So that light shines on us, and we breathe and we return over and over to this wonderful present moment, letting all that old stuff fall away, all the patterns that are preventing us from growing and changing and awakening. And we hold those in our hearts, feeling the energy of all those reactive emotions or patterns, traumas. And we slowly follow the threads all the way back to the beginning of that pattern, to its origin, being willing to experience it fully so that it can release and we can be free. And we do this not just for ourselves, but for all beings and all life. And we know that as we do it, as I do it, it's having an effect on everything. It's contributing because we are connected. There's no separation. And when it gets hard, we make sure that we have others around us to support us on this path of liberation, who are also doing the work of transformation and healing. And we call on a reliable source of refuge to help us. For me, that's the earth. That's Mother Nature. She shows me the way. I touch the ground, I breathe the fragrance of the rose, and I'm instantly reborn. And all my worries and concerns relax in the embrace of Mother Earth. And I can see what is. I can come home to the family of things, like Mary Oliver once wrote. I'm going to read this to you because it's so beautiful, and then we'll end. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination. It calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting. Over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. So let's find our place. Let's take our seat. Let's come home to our true selves, cultivating joy, breathing in and out, deep and slow, finding calm and ease, and a sweet release into this beautiful and precious moment, feeding that spirit of what we want to see in the world. Thank you.